The world is loud, deafening even. From the moment you open your eyes each morning, it begins. The noise, the opinions, the distractions. Everywhere you turn, someone is trying to shape your mind, mold your path, define your worth. It comes from the media, from social circles, from institutions, from strangers who don't even know your name but feel entitled to tell you who you are. They scream their fears in your ears, whisper limitations into your dreams, and package mediocrity as wisdom. They hand you a blueprint for life, one drawn by people who never dared to break the pattern themselves. They say, be realistic. They say, play it safe. They say, that's not how things are done. But who gave them the authority to dictate what's possible for you? Why do we give so much power to those who haven't lived a single day inside our souls? The truth is, the world doesn't know your story. It doesn't know the fire inside you, the vision that keeps you awake at night, the silent battles you fought when no one was watching. The world only sees from the outside, and from that limited view it judges, it labels, it confines. And yet most people live according to this noise. They make choices not from inner conviction, but from outer pressure. They silence their own intuition just to align with the expectations of a world that has never walked their path, and in doing so they lose themselves, not all at once, but slowly. Day by day, decision by decision, compromise by compromise, they become strangers to their own dreams. They carry the weight of opinions that were never theirs to begin with. They chase approval in places that offer none, and when the world turns its back on them, as it always does when convenience fades, they're left wondering who they've become and why they feel so empty. That's the danger of listening to the world. It offers noise, not truth. It speaks in fear, not faith. It thrives on conformity, not courage. It applauds safety, not greatness. The voices out there will try to drown your purpose with doubt. They'll tell you to shrink when your destiny demands expansion. They'll reward your silence when your soul is crying out to be heard. But you were not born to blend in. You were not created to live a life scripted by someone else's limitations. Deep within you, there is a truth that does not shout. It doesn't compete with the world's chaos. It waits patiently for you to be still enough to hear it. It is the voice of clarity, the voice of purpose, the voice of your higher self. But you cannot hear it until you first learn to silence the noise. You must stop letting the world define what's valuable to you. You must stop measuring your worth by standards you never agreed to, because every time you listen to the world instead of your inner compass, you move further away from the life you were meant to live. You don't owe the world your conformity. You don't owe it your dreams, your truth, or your silence. What you owe is honesty to yourself, loyalty to your purpose, commitment to your growth. The world will keep talking, it always does. But whether or not you choose to listen, that is entirely up to you. And in that decision lies the difference between existing and truly living. This is where your power begins, not by shouting louder than the world, but by refusing to let its noise drown your truth. Because the world is not your guide, it's your test. And the only voice worth trusting is the one that lives within. The world tells you to look outside for answers, look to authority, to trends, to systems. But nothing of lasting power has ever come from the outside. True power, unshakable and limitless, is born within. It's not something you acquire, it's something you awaken. That inner force is quiet. It doesn't shout for attention, but it never leaves. It waits patiently for you to notice it, to believe in it, to use it. This is the power that speaks to you in moments of solitude. It's the energy you feel when your heart says go, even when your mind says no. It's the unexplainable force that pushes you to keep going when everything else tells you to stop. Most people don't access this power, not because it's not there, but because they're too distracted to hear it. They've been trained to ignore their instincts, to fear their own judgment, to seek validation from others before they act. But the truth is, your inner voice has more wisdom than 1,000 opinions. That power inside you knows who you are, what you're capable of, and why you're here. It doesn't need proof. It doesn't need permission. It only needs you to listen. You don't need the world to believe in you. You need to believe in yourself. You don't need to see the whole path. You just need to take the next step with certainty. That inner strength will carry you through storms. It will pull you out of failure. It will lift you above fear. but only if you trust it more than you trust the noise outside. The world rewards surface-level confidence, but your inner power demands depth. Depth of vision, depth of courage, depth of faith. No one can give you this power, and no one can take it from you. It is yours alone. And when you choose to access it, to lean into it fully, something shifts. You stop waiting to be saved and start realizing you are the answer. You are the source. You are the spark. The world outside may remain loud and chaotic, but inside there is calm. Inside there is truth. Inside there is unstoppable power. From the earliest stages of life, most are handed a script. Go to school, get good grades, get a job, fit in, follow the rules, do what everyone else is doing, and don't ask too many questions. This is the programming of mediocrity, quiet, invisible, but deeply rooted. It's not forced upon you with violence or threat. It's disguised as common sense. It's wrapped in words like security, normalcy, and responsibility. But at its core, it's designed to kill dreams softly, without anyone even noticing. This programming doesn't encourage excellence, it discourages risk. It doesn't reward originality, it praises obedience. It teaches you to color within the lines even when your soul was born, to paint a new picture. It makes you fear failure, even though failure is the price of greatness. It convinces you to settle, to wait, to compromise, until your potential rots inside you from disuse. And because it's so common, most never question it. Most people live out their lives thinking they are making wise choices, when in reality they're just repeating patterns designed by someone else. They mistake routine for purpose. They call survival success. But deep inside, there's a silent discomfort, a feeling that something is missing, that something more is possible, that they were meant for greater things. That feeling is not an illusion. It's your spirit resisting the program. It's the part of you that refuses to die quietly. It's the part that knows you weren't born to live like everyone else. You weren't born for a life of mediocrity. You were born for mastery, for contribution, for a purpose that goes beyond simply surviving the day. But you cannot activate that higher purpose until you unlearn the lies, until you challenge the script, until you stop letting fear and routine dictate your actions. Excellence doesn't come from comfort. It comes from conscious rebellion against the ordinary. And the moment you stop following what the world calls normal and start following what your soul calls necessary, you begin to rise. Not just above mediocrity, but above everything that ever tried to keep you small. Your vision wasn't given to anyone else. It wasn't announced. It wasn't explained. It didn't come with a manual or permission slip. It arrived quietly, in a moment of reflection, a flash of inspiration, or maybe through years of struggle. But when it came for you, and that's why the world can't see it, because it's yours alone. Your vision was planted in the soil of your soul, not theirs. And yet too many people give it up the moment it isn't understood. They share their goals, their plans, their calling, and when others raise an eyebrow, laugh, or remain silent, they retreat. They begin to question themselves. But here's the truth. The world isn't supposed to see it yet. It's not because your vision is impossible. It's because it's invisible to everyone except you. And that's how every vision begins, with one believer, one dreamer, one soul brave enough to trust what no one else can see. Most people are prisoners of their own limitations. When they hear your dream, they filter it through their fears, their failures, their regrets. They tell you it's unrealistic because they never made it work for themselves. They tell you to be careful when what they really mean is stay small like me. But their disbelief is not your problem. Their lack of faith is not your responsibility. Your only job is to believe hard enough to build it anyway. The greatest tragedy is not a dream denied by the world, but a dream abandoned by the one who was given it. Your vision doesn't need approval to be valid. It needs commitment. It needs belief. It needs relentless action, day after day, even in silence, even without applause, even when the path is lonely. The world can't see your vision because it's still being built. You are the architect, the builder, and the living proof. Stop explaining. Stop seeking permission. Let your results speak the language they'll eventually understand. Because when the vision becomes reality, the world will no longer question it. But by then, you won't need the recognition. you'll already be walking in your purpose. Every time you listen to the world instead of yourself, a piece of your truth dies. Not with noise, not with drama, quietly, silently. It disappears beneath the weight of opinions, under the shadow of doubt, in the corners where conformity hides. The cost isn't always immediate. It builds slowly. Lost confidence, dimmed passion, goals you stop talking about because you've convinced yourself they're too far, too big, too unrealistic. But the price is always paid. You pay with your energy when you chase things you never wanted just to impress people who don't matter. You pay with your time when you walk down paths built by others, hoping you'll eventually find your own. You pay with your peace when you live a life based on expectations instead of intention. And worst of all, you pay with your potential. Because every time you silence your inner voice to follow the crowd, you leave the best parts of yourself unexplored. People don't lose themselves all at once. They lose themselves slowly, one compromise at a time, a dream ignored here, a doubt accepted there, a risk avoided, a truth hidden, until one day they wake up and don't recognize the life they've built, not because it failed, but because it was never truly theirs to begin with. The world sells comfort dressed as success. It tells you that stability is more valuable than fulfillment, that safety matters more than passion. But what it doesn't tell you is what you lose in that trade. It doesn't mention the quiet regret that follows, the aching what-ifs, the knowing deep down that you settled, that you shrank, that you said yes to their version of life and no to your own. Listening to the world might keep you liked. It might keep you safe, but it will never make you free. Freedom begins the moment you stop caring who's watching, the moment you stop editing yourself for acceptance, the moment you reclaim your voice, your vision, your path, and that freedom, that bold decision to live from within instead of without, is worth everything the world could never offer. There's a voice inside you that doesn't beg for attention, doesn't argue to be heard, and doesn't compete with the noise around you. It waits, silently, steadily. It speaks in the quiet moments. When you're alone with your thoughts, when the world finally stops shouting, when the distractions fade just enough for you to feel something deeper. That voice is not your doubt, not your fear, and certainly not your failure. That voice is your truth. It's the part of you that knows. It knows when something doesn't feel right, even if it looks perfect on the outside. It knows when you're meant for more, even if everyone around you says you should be content. It knows your purpose, not as a vague idea, but as a certainty that lives under every excuse you've ever made. But for most, that voice is drowned out, not by others, but by themselves. They've trained themselves to listen to everything but their own wisdom. They trust strangers more than their own gut. They follow the world and ignore the whisper that could lead them to freedom. You must stop silencing the one voice that's actually speaking in your favor. That inner guide is not a fantasy. It's your connection to purpose, to power, to the path that belongs to you and no one else. It doesn't scream because it doesn't need to. It's the truth, and truth doesn't compete, but it will fade if ignored. It will quiet if rejected. And if you keep turning away from it long enough, it will feel like it's disappeared. But it hasn't. It's still there, waiting for your trust, waiting for your decision to stop letting the world narrate your story. When you start listening to that voice, things change, not always instantly, but permanently. Clarity replaces confusion. Courage grows in the space where fear once lived. You stop chasing and start creating. You stop reacting and start leading. The world will always offer opinions, but only your inner voice offers direction. That's the voice you must follow, not because it's loud, but because it's true. And when you follow truth, you don't just live, you rise. Something powerful begins to unfold the moment you start trusting that inner voice. You stop seeking external confirmation for internal convictions. You stop waiting for applause to feel worthy, and you stop needing agreement to take action. You begin moving differently, more quietly, more deliberately, but with a power that's unshakable. You're no longer fueled by fear of what might go wrong. You're driven by a deeper knowing of what must go right. It's not ego. It's alignment. When you trust that voice within, you don't need the path to be clear. You just need the courage to walk. Because clarity doesn't come before action, it comes from action. Most people wait for certainty, but those who move with purpose create it. And it starts by believing that what's inside you is stronger than what's in front of you, that no matter how loud the world becomes, you are guided by something louder, your own truth. The shift is subtle but unmistakable. You stop comparing, you stop competing. You begin living in a rhythm that's yours and yours alone. Decisions become easier, not because life becomes simple, but because you're no longer pulled in 100 directions. Your values become your compass. Your purpose becomes your anchor. And your mind, once clouded by noise, begins to sharpen with focus and vision. Fear begins to lose its grip, not because it disappears, but because it can no longer control you. You see fear as information, not a command. You act in spite of it. You move forward anyway. And that movement, that obedience to your own voice, builds something most never touch, self-trust. The kind of trust that doesn't break under pressure. The kind that keeps you going when progress is invisible. The kind that makes you unstoppable, not because you always win, but because you never stop building. When you trust your inner voice, the world may still doubt you, but it won't matter, because you won't be looking for their belief. You'll already be living yours. And in the end, that's what changes everything. Everything begins with a thought. Every invention, every movement, every revolution, internal or external, started as a single idea, a spark, a belief. And yet, most people treat their thoughts as casual, disposable, insignificant. They allow their minds to be filled with doubt, fear, limitation, and then wonder why their lives reflect exactly that. But your mind is not a container, it's a creator. It doesn't just record reality, it shapes it. What you think consistently, you begin to believe. What you believe, you begin to expect. What you expect, you begin to attract. This isn't theory, it's law. And the problem is never that people don't think. It's that they think the wrong things over and over until those thoughts become their identity. They feed their minds with what the world says you can't, you're not ready, it's too late. And after a while, those borrowed beliefs start to feel like truth. But you can choose differently. You can take back the reins. You can become intentional about what you allow to live in your mind. Because thought is not harmless. It's the seed of everything that will grow in your life. Think limitation, and your actions will follow that script. Think expansion, and you'll begin to move in ways that stretch you. Think lack, and your life will shrink to match it. But think abundance, and doors will begin to open, not because they weren't there, but because your mind was too clouded to see them. You must guard your thoughts like treasure, because that's exactly what they are, the starting point of your future. Feed your mind with strength, with vision, with purpose, and watch how your actions begin to change. Watch how your words, your energy, your choices elevate. It doesn't happen by accident. It happens by thought, repeated, focused, powerful thought. You don't need to control everything around you. You need to control what's within you. Your mind is your kingdom. Your thoughts are the architects. Build something worthy. Think on purpose. Think with discipline. Because once your thoughts align with your vision, everything else will rise to meet them. You cannot serve two masters, faith and fear. One must dominate, one must lead. And every day, with every decision, you choose which one sits at the throne of your life. Fear is familiar. It shows up quickly, speaks loudly, and demands your attention. It dresses itself in logic, wears the mask of protection, and whispers, "Be careful." But what it really means is, stay small. Fear keeps you grounded, not in safety, but in stagnation. Faith, on the other hand, is quiet, but fierce. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand proof. It simply asks, do you believe in something greater than your current reality? Faith is the substance of vision, the foundation of progress, the force that moves you when sight tells you to stop. And unlike fear, faith doesn't guarantee comfort. It demands courage. It demands action without confirmation. It demands that you trust the unseen, even when the world calls you crazy. Fear will always show you what you might lose. Faith will always remind you of what you're meant to gain. Fear is reactive. It waits for danger, then takes control. Faith is proactive. It sees possibility and dares you to move toward it. Most people don't fail because they lack potential. They fail because they obey fear and reject faith. They wait for guarantees that never come. They ask for signs, but ignore the power within them to create the sign themselves. Faith is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about believing that you are equipped to face what isn't. It's the mindset that says, I will walk through uncertainty because I am certain of who I am. And when that becomes your posture, you shift. You begin to lead your life instead of being led by it. You begin to choose growth over comfort, vision over noise, progress over perfection. You must make the decision every day to starve fear and feed faith. Speak what you want, not what you fear. Move toward your vision, not away from your doubts. Because the future doesn't belong to the fearful. It belongs to the faithful, the ones who walk forward, especially when fear tells them to turn back. The mind is a battlefield. Every day, thoughts are waging war, some pulling you forward, others holding you back. And in this war, discipline is your only defense. Without it, you become a slave to circumstance, a victim of emotion, a prisoner of distraction. You cannot afford to let your mind wander aimlessly and expect your life to move purposefully. What you allow to dominate your thinking will shape the course of your destiny. Most people let their minds run on autopilot, driven by fear, scarcity, past trauma, or the opinions of others. They absorb everything around them and wonder why they feel so powerless. But the undisciplined mind is like an open gate. Anything can walk in, take root, and grow. If you don't intentionally plant the seeds of purpose, discipline, and clarity, weeds of doubt, fear, and confusion will take over. Discipline of the mind is not about being perfect. It's about being aware. It's about catching those limiting thoughts and replacing them with truth before they have the chance to settle. It's about building mental habits that serve you, like gratitude when things go wrong, focus when life gets noisy, and belief when nothing is working yet. It's choosing your thoughts the same way you would choose what to feed your body. Because your mind digests everything you allow into it, and what it consumes, it becomes. Train your mind to focus on what matters. Refuse to give your attention to things that drain your energy or rob your peace. Remind yourself daily of who you are, what you're capable of, and why you began. That repetition rewires you. That repetition becomes strength, because discipline is not just what you do, it's who you become. It turns chaos into order, noise into clarity, potential into power. If you can master your mind, you can master your life. But mastery doesn't happen once, it happens daily. In the quiet choices, in the inner battles, in the discipline no one sees, but everyone eventually feels. The undisciplined mind reacts, the disciplined mind creates. And your future will be the exact reflection of which one you train. You can think, you can dream, you can believe with all your heart, but until you act, nothing changes. Action is the bridge between the invisible and the visible, between who you are and who you're becoming. It's the only language the universe responds to, not your intentions, not your plans, your actions. Because what you do reveals what you truly believe, far louder than what you say. It comes from doing more. It's found in the motion, in the failure, in the correction. You will never figure out your full path by standing still. You must walk. You must move. You must build the bridge through your steps. Action doesn't mean perfection. It means commitment. It means starting where you are with what you have, even when it feels like it's not enough. Because momentum creates clarity. Small moves become breakthroughs. One step forward is worth more than 1,000 intentions left unexecuted. Your life will not respond to what you meant to do. It will respond to what you actually did. The perfect time is when you decide that movement matters more than fear, that progress matters more than opinions, that your dream is worth more than your hesitation. Every result you want is waiting on the other side of action, and no one else can cross that bridge for you. Not inspiration, not motivation, only action. And when you move, even imperfectly, you begin to send a message, not just to the world, but to yourself. I am becoming who I was meant to be. And in that movement, you build not just results, but identity. You don't just change your life. You change yourself. You don't rise until you silence the noise, not just temporarily, permanently. Because as long as the outside world holds power over your mind, you'll live at the mercy of distraction, doubt, and delay. The noise comes in many forms: opinions, judgments, trends, news, gossip, criticism, all of it designed to pull you away from your center. And if you don't shut it out, it will shape you into someone you were never meant to be. You cannot live your truth while constantly absorbing the voices of others. You cannot build your future while trying to please the present. The noise will always be there, but your attention doesn't have to be. You must stop giving mental real estate to anything that doesn't align with your purpose. You must become ruthless about what you allow in your mind, not just selective, ruthless. Because peace is not given, it is protected, and you protect it by eliminating what doesn't serve it. But real power is found in silence, in clarity, in the discipline of listening inward when everything else screams for you to look outward. In that silence, you remember who you are. In that silence, you reset your vision. You get clear again on what matters and what never did. Let others speak. Let the world shout. Let them doubt, debate, and distract. You're not here for their approval. You're here for alignment. And the only way to stay aligned is to rise above the noise. Stop explaining. Stop defending. Stop reacting. Let your results speak. Let your focus lead. Let your silence become your strength. When you no longer need to be understood, you become unstoppable because you are no longer tied to noise. You are grounded in truth. You are moving with intention. And in that quiet power, you will build what the world never saw coming, because while they were busy talking, you were busy transforming. And the story you've lived up until now does not have to be the story you continue living. Too many people carry their past like a prison sentence, repeating chapters they never wanted to write. But you are not your mistakes. You are not your delays. You are not what the world called you when it didn't understand your purpose. You are the author now. You hold the pen. And the question is no longer what happened. The question is, what will I create from here? Every great life is a story of a person who refused to let the past define the ending. They rewrote the narrative. They turned pain into purpose. They turned silence into strength. They turned struggle into a foundation and dared to begin again. Rewriting your story doesn't mean racing the past. It means rising from it. It means extracting the lesson, claiming the wisdom, and using both to build something greater. It means no longer living on default, but by design. The world may have given you a version of life, one shaped by fear, noise, and limitation. But now you choose to write your own. One built on vision, clarity, and truth, following rules that never applied to your truth. That decision is the beginning of everything. And once it's made, you don't need to announce it. You live it. You embody it. You let your actions speak louder than any proclamation. From this point on, you choose what gets written. Not the world, not the doubt, not the fear, you. And when you take back the pen, you take back your life. Not someday, not next year, now. Because this is your story. And it's time you wrote it in your own voice, with power, with purpose, and without apology,